Hello. Is this the castle you're looking for? Hello everyone, and welcome to 13 of 14, and this is Saturday the 10th of July, and this is the first of today's ones, Beaumaris Castle, and possibly my favourite. And the first one, I've been happy to use the pictures I took when I visited in the slides, mainly because, honestly, my phone takes pretty decent photos, and I'm usually quite happy to use it, especially for document picturing, but I have got to up my photography game. Especially, I've realised this week, because I'm recording this in Jersey, on a research trip with Drac. Yeah, you have to up your photography game. I will get there. Right. So, Beaumaris. And this is actually one of my pictures. Now, I really loved Beaumaris, and I really loved visiting it. I loved that whole thing there. Sort of foam castle bits you can build the castle out of. It's a great thing. Really loved it as a use of space, and it amuses people and fits with the castle. There are places I have been going in castles where they go, ah yes, we want something to entertain the kids. Let's put in a jungle gym. And it takes up a huge amount of space, and it ruins, in sort of ways, it impacts on the sight line of the castle, which can make me sound really grouchy. I don't begrudge it. But it does have a large impact on the space. It does impact on how you can view the castle. This castle has it really well thought out. It has lots of very cool things, but they fit in, and like these foam castle bits, they are actually genuinely interesting and genuinely innovative. I'm not sure who in the Beaumaris Castle team, it's Cadwell again, has kind of sit there and thought up these things. Perhaps there are things you can buy off the internet. I don't know. I haven't gone and specifically researched it. But it's a really good castle. And you can get up and walk along quite a lot of that line, and you can walk through all those castles and walk through all the doors and wander around it. And it is really, really cool. I took this photo on my previous research trip where I was in Wales. And it's a really, really nice place to go. And it's really a lot of fun. I cannot stress it more highly enough how fun Beaumaris was to go around, how much fun other people seem to have going around it, and what a nice place it was to be. And also, what a brilliant castle it is. It is possibly the definition of a concentric castle. It is definitely Master James St. George, and there is a statue of him in there. Best work. There are lots of things in there which are really, really cool. Now, those of you who've seen this picture already online will notice that I have canted it about 90 degrees. So I've taken it from pointing down that way to, let's do it with this hand, up that way. Yeah, 90 degrees. And the reason I've done that, quite simply, is because it fits better on the screen. And when I do a full screen, you can see it more clearly if it's that way. And you can see what I mean by a concentric castle. Concentric castle is something which is built in layers and tends to be symmetrical. Now, not all castles can, of course, be symmetrical. They don't have the space, or their geographical features gets in the way. But because of the land and the space that Beaumaris was built in, which does appear to have included some clearing of a local village, but there was also an expansion of the village next to it, so I'm not sure about displacement. There probably was a deal of displacement. There might have been people who didn't want to stay there because of the English coming in. There might well have been a large number of English and Southern Welsh people forcing the people there out. It's probably a 60-40 split, if not a 70-30 one. But it has a large moat going around it. some of it is still there. A large chunk of the moat is still there. And you can see it, and it looks absolutely fantastic. You can see the Barbican. You can see the various points which are designed to stop you being able to charge straight in. If you notice, there are various gates and sally ports. I have to admit, the gate on the northern side was filled in quite early on in the construction and doesn't seem to have been ever considered sort of a proper thing to have, because you're weakening your defences in some respects. And this castle is not really about being a castle which you are going to be sallying forth from. It's a castle which is supposed to survive a siege for a long time, to hold up an enemy force for a campaigning season, if not longer, and allow time for the garrison to be reinforced. And to do that, and on that end, it has its own dock, which would have connected directly into the sea. Meaning that probably the moat would have connected directly into the sea, because that's the only way it could work, to my mind, because it would have been. And so the moat would have had a lot of water coming in, and the castle would have. There was also a town wall section going off it. And that was another big thing. So there was been a town wall. That comes off it and runs around the town to protect the town. The town wall never seems to have been completed, but there was large sections of it done. So it would have had a fortified town, which the main gate to the castle would have gone through. That's another reason why I think that the red gate doesn't get completed. I have a feeling they decide, hang on, we're going to work through the town here. But you still have the northern gatehouse and the southern gatehouse. The reason is because the northern gatehouse is this big impressive building you see here. It was going to be a full royal residence, and when I say a full royal residence, I mean it would have put the apartments in Harlech, the apartments in Carnarvon to shame in many regards. It would have been an absolute masterpiece if it had been completed. And one of the things I do love, but I've not included a picture in here of it, when you're going around Beaumaris, you will see various interpretations of what the castle would have looked like when it was completed. And honestly, the person who I was going around the castle with had to pull me out of a mental vision where I was working out how much money I would need to raise in a crowdfunding to both pay the legal costs required for it, and B, the construction costs to actually complete Beaumaris Castle as it had been planned to its original plans. I didn't think I'd be able to do the town wall as well. I never thought I got planning permission for that. And I doubt I'd get planning permission for the actual castle. But it is such a beautiful design. And even from what is completed, we can see how beautiful it was going to be. This was going to be a truly impressive beast of a castle. A beast of a war machine. Its purpose was going to be to break armies. Because if you're an army, your choice is invade. Right then, if I want to go down there, I need to take that castle. Or I can't go anywhere near that castle. So I either have to leave them in de facto control of this area, because I can, or I have to lay siege. Because there is pretty much no way you can quickly take this castle if it is properly completed. If completed as planned, it is pretty indomitable. Now, I'm not saying that's the thing as impossible. That isn't the point of castles. Again, there is such an obsession, and I call it the Titanic syndrome. There is an obsession with things being, it's invulnerable, it is the strongest ever built, it's unable to be damaged. That's wrong. You cannot build anything which is completely invulnerable. For example, when we're talking about ship's armour, and we go, right then, so this battleship has bigger guns than that battleship, therefore it's better. Okay, well actually that's a bit more complicated conversation, because what about the fire control systems? Are the fire controls on the second battleship better than the first one? Because if, let's say, the second ship is 3 times or twice as likely to score a hit as the first one, well, if they get 2 hits and the first one only gets 1 hit, the first one will get 1 hit, that causes damage, but where does it cause damage? The other one gets 2 hits. Okay, maybe the first one won't penetrate their armor because it's designed for something bigger, but if the second hit comes anywhere near where that armor first hit was, it might well make it through and cause a lot of damage. And if you continue on like that, you can cause a lot of damage and can end up sinking the ship. It's the same with castles. They are not invulnerable. They are not impossible to take. And as we've been over, some of these castles were taken by a couple of people pretending to be carpenters. But you have to remember, a carpenter comes in with a lot of tools. A carpenter is an expected person. And finally, and this is the biggest point here with the carpenter, they have a lot of license in the castle because a lot of it's made of wood. I know, we're talking about stone castles, but a lot of them are made of wood. Large chunks of them are. And it would have been absolutely amazing. That's not being built. So here is an old map of the town, and as you can see already, it's wrong. It's a medieval map. If you look there, you can see the dock, you can see the town wall, you can see the drawbridge which goes across the moat and connects the castle to the town. If you look here, you can see the drawbridge, you can see the town wall, but you can also see that the dock is not connected to the sea. Believe it or not, land grew up quickly and it doesn't seem to be connected to the sea. It requires work to maintain its connection to the sea. This is the thing, and they don't seem to do that. But you'll also notice that the town wall's going down straight, and the dock wall is sitting out like that, when actually the dock wall sort of went down like that, and the whole thing was supposed to curve around to the sea. Life happens. Because the reason it was designed as this was to provide those ships, if they came in, with protection. If you think about it, they're coming in to the castle, and the castle dock, they have the wall on one side, and they have the castle on the other side, so they're protected from wind, they're protected from any enemy fire. It's very difficult to attack them, unless you control the castle, and because you control the town. And in the nicest way, you won't be able to control that section of town wall if you don't control the castle, because the castle will be able to fire down on it from a multitude of positions. They really will, as you can again see here. So, geography is the critical factor with Anglesey and with Beaumaris. Beaumaris is being built where it is, and this is a recent picture of it from the air, because of the geography, because of the worry of Scottish forces coming down the coast and attacking the Welsh there, or possibly linking up with some of the Welsh there, either attacking the people who are Edward's Welsh subjects, who he needs to protect, because Scottish raiding is a thing. This is the point, and I will make this. I know this is an English person saying this, but as you know, my family background is Scottish, Welsh, all sorts of places. They all like to beat each other up equally. None of them are saints. None of them have the right to cast the first stone, really. So, Beaumaris is being built for that reason. It's also being built because it gives you access to Anglesey. And again, if you go along, it's the main chain of forts. And going from the Liverpool area across Flint Castle, Conwy Castle, Ruthven Castle, all those forts and those castles leading to Beaumaris. And if you've got Beaumaris at one end and you've got Carnarvon at the other end of the Menai Straits, you control the straits. That's the idea. Or at least you have good observation over the straits if anyone tries to do anything in them. And as you can see, there is a chunk of the moat still there. And the moat went right round, and you can see the dock of the wall. And that was to connect it. That was to get a sort of that. You can see the dock bit if you look there, and that wall was to protect the dock. And then there was another wall which was supposed to go along and around the town. As you can see, though, even in this map, it wasn't really completed. You have visibly along there roughly 3 towers, a single gate, and a bit of walling, but it doesn't look really crenellated or strong, so there is an argument as to how good it was, and that partially is because so much of the town is already built. The town grows up in many ways quicker than the castle does. And here is another picture taken by me. And you can see the lovely gatehouse. You can see where the drawbridge went across. You can see the layers of arrow slits. You can see the fact that the way the castle's built up. You can see there's multiple levels for archers to fire from. And again, you don't have massive garrisons in these castles. They're not designed for massive garrisons. They can accommodate a garrison, a larger garrison if you want to send it, but that's not the purpose. The purpose of these castles is to be able to defend it by few against many. So they will hold up any attacking force. Now, after the Statute of Rhuddlan, enacted in March 1284, Wales was divided into counties and shires to sort of copy how England was governed. And the 3 new shires created in the northwest: Carnarvon, Melneuve, and Anglesey. Now, Carnarvon and Harlech, of course, are the ones which are castles which administer Carnarvon and Melneuve. And they also built Conway as a defence. Originally, they were planning on building a castle in Lefez on Llanfas on Anglesey, which is a very rich town at this point. It's a very key town in Wales at this point. However, the other castles were expensive, and that was put off for obvious reasons. It was decided to save money. Unfortunately, 1294 happens. Manor ap Llewellyn rebels. It's bloody. Roger de Pulsden, the Sheriff of Anglesey, is a casualty. And whilst Edward suppresses the rebellion and reoccupies Anglesey in April 1295, he immediately decides he's going to fortify the area. He's going to build a castle. Beaumaris literally means fair marsh. And that tells you exactly what it is. It was a marshy area which was very flat, which meant you could build whatever castle you liked. You had plenty of water, but it was going to take some work. The castle was positioned to one corner of the town, as shown by the maps, and following pretty similar plan to that were adopted in Conway. They didn't really follow the same operational plan though as they had in Conway, in that they didn't build the town walls first. They built the foundations for them and then they left it to carry out a focus on the castle. The castle was considered more important here. Now, a large amount of work is undertaken over the first summer, that is 1295. And there's an average of 1,800 workmen, 450 stonemasons, 375 quarriers on site at any one time. This is a humongous workforce, and once you include other peoples around, seem to be around and available, you very quickly get up to 2,800 people being employed working on the site, before including soldiers who were there. So this consumed roughly £270 a week in wages. And when I say 2,800, there are people going to listen, point out my numbers and go, well, you said 450 and 375. Well, that's 75 short of 2,700. So that must be 175 short. Well, the key point I was making there was there are other people there as well, other than just them. And the estimate I've been reading is 2,800. And I agree with that. I agree with the first set of figures, which are quoted in many sources, and I agree with the estimate of the 2,800, because honestly, to speed the work, there were a number of people there whose roles were, for example, carpenters are a specialist class and are there. Various other people are there. So this consumes a lot of money, and wages and fall into arrears. Officials have to issue leather tokens instead of paying the workforce normal coinage, and the centre of the castle is basically filled with huts to house the workforce over winter. This leads to Master James St. George sending the following note in spring 1296. In case you should wonder where so much money could go in a week, we would have you know that we have needed and shall continue to need 400 masons, both cutters and layers, together with 2,000 less skilled workmen, 100 carts, 60 wagons, and 30 boats, bringing stone and sea coal, 200 quarrymen, 30 smiths and carpenters for putting in the joists and floorboards and other necessary jobs. All this takes no account of the garrison, nor of purchase of material, of which there will have been a great quantity. The men's pay has been and still is very much in arrears, and we are having the greatest difficulty in keeping them, because they have simply nothing to live on. As a result, construction slows during 1296, and debts continue to pile up. And it had stopped entirely by 1300, when you have 11,000 having been spent. Now, here is the interesting thing about the 11,000 figure. Because someone, and I'll remember their name in a second, has been very nicely kept going on to various the UK National Archives website and working out these figures based on their maths. And whilst I'm not always in 100% agreement of their maths, it is nice to listen to it and nice to think it out. So, Dan Elbridge, thank you for all your comments. You've put £15,000 is worth approximately 11 million in 2017 money. I would say it's probably worth a lot, but more. But you have pointed out that in 1270 you could buy with the following with £15,000, 19,736 horses, 43,000 roughly cows, about 115,000 stones, roughly 94,000 quarters of wheat, and your wages for days of skilled tradesmen would account for 1.5 million days of a skilled tradesman. Now, £11,000 is less than 15,000, but it's not a lot less. And that gives you a very interesting figure about that. And again, thank you to Dan Elbridge for his comments. However, the halt is in 1300 is because of the wars starting in Scotland, and that requires money, and money also requires Scottish castles. And eventually, James of St George is called off to help with Scotland. However, in 1306, Edward, as I already mentioned, becomes very concerned about possible Scottish invasion of North Wales. And he has to send in first James of St George back, but after he dies, in 1309, Master Nicholas de Nornford, who had been James's most senior apprentice and one of his best people. And he works on the castle for another 21 years. The castle still doesn't reach to its intended height, and by the end of the project, the full £15,000 that we've just been discussing has been spent. But a royal survey in 1343 suggests that at least another £700 would be needed to complete the castle. This was never though invested. And honestly, if I was being honest with you, at that time, probably about another £1,500 would be needed. I never trust the surveys. In 1400, a revolt breaks out in North Wales against English rule, led by Owen Gwyndere, and Beaumaris Castle was sieged and then captured by the rebels in 1403. It's retaken by royal forces in 1405. The castle had been ill-maintained and fell into disrepair, and in 1534, when Roland de Verville was the castle constable, rain was leaking into most of the rooms. 1539, a report complained that it was projected an arsenal of only 8 or 10 small guns and 40 bows. It was protected by only an arsenal of 8 to 10 small guns and 40 bows, which the castle's new constable, Richard Berkeley, considered to be completely inadequate for protecting the fortress against any potential Scottish attack. And in fact, by 1609, the castle was classed utterly decayed. English Civil War comes along, and again, Thomas Berkeley is a good name here, and it's an important name for this castle. Held Beaumaris for the king, and spent around £3,000 improving its defences, but by 1646, Parliament defeated the royal armies and the castle was surrendered by the Colonel Richard Berkeley in June. Anglesey revolts against Parliament in 1648. Beaumaris is briefly occupied by royalist forces, but surrenders again in October 1648. Parliament was concerned, though, about the threat of a royalist invasion from Scotland, and Beaumaris was spared being slighted. In fact, they put a Colonel John Jones, so unlike the other castles, a Colonel John Jones sent, come the castle governor, garrisons installed inside, and a cost of £1,700 a year to protect it. When Charles II returns to the throne in 1660, the Berkeley family are restored as castle constables, and at this point, Beaumaris is stripped of its lead and remaining resources, including the roofs, to give them a lot of money. What can I say? It happens. Anyway, try not to get too much. Gatehouses. Now, this is one of the interesting things that I found when wandering around. The gatehouses and the wonderful signs they have in there. I mean, again, lots of places have signs like this in them. They're quite a feature in modern historical when you're wandering around these places, but these signs are really, really good. I liked the stylistic drawings, I liked the language used, and I liked the way they explained stuff. So they were really a very good place. Beaumaris, as said, if the Berkeley family hadn't turned into a park, eventually they buy it off the crown, turn it into a park, and turn it into a nice visitors attraction, it might not have survived as intact as it had been. But honestly, it's frankly, there a lot of the reason the castle survives as it is because of Parliament's garrisoning it during those years of the Cromwellian dictatorship. I know, I'm saying something good about the Cromwellian dictatorship and not just wearing a Cromwell tank. Because that put a lot of money into the castle to maintain it. Beaumaris was never completed to the level at which it deserved to be completed. It was forgotten because of other wars and other issues. But it had potential to be absolutely gorgeous. And it is gorgeous as it is. You can see from these pictures how powerful it is. You can also see how close parts of the inner castle get to the outer castle, and how difficult it would have been to try and take the outer castle, the outer wall, if you have people firing down on you from the inner. That's the whole point of a concentric castle. You're basically buying time, because if I take you, I can charge, and I might take a section of the outer wall. I might be able to get close. But then I am getting fired at from what's on the sections of the inner wall, that's under control. Probably getting fired at by the turrets on the outer wall, unless I manage to take them. And I'm probably facing a counterattack. It's a classic problem. In that I actually go from being in a bad situation to being in a worse situation. And only the application of a large amount of firepower can really change that. However, I'm going to say something else. The fact that governments haven't been interested in Beaumaris means that we have kept this beautiful thing. Because let's say Ireland had been a separate state the whole time and occasionally allied with France, like Scotland had done in its previous history, or Scotland stayed separate and had allied with France again, you would probably have seen that outer wall taken down and replaced by a star fort of something like that design, because this is the place you need to be to protect Anglesey from an attack from the north if you are trying to defend the rest of Wales. It's just the only option. It's the best location for it. That is not one of my pictures. That is one of my pictures. Now imagine that about another story at least higher, possibly two. Imagine how far you could see. Those are the Menai Straits. Across into Wales, across into Snowdonia and the National Park. This is what this castle was about. It was about being able to see the countryside, see the country around you and keep an eye on it. And it was about having a presence. And you can also see in this picture, if you look down in the bottom left corner, that is the statue of Master James of St. George. And this is his best castle. Now, Arnold Taylor described this Beaumaris as Britain's most perfect plan with walls within walls. No, most perfect example of symmetrical concentric planning with walls within walls. And the fact is there is debate over it, because some people go, is it more palace or is it more castle because of its shape and positioning? And you will all know my opinion on this matter. Castles are often part palace, part fortification. That's the point. They're demonstrations of power. They're like a warship. There are purists who say a warship exists for fighting wars. True. But wars are a very small amount of time and a very costly thing. It's far better to deter wars, and you deter wars by being able to support allies, and that could mean turning up for disaster relief. and by maintaining diplomatic discussions with everyone else in the hope that you talk before you war, you jaw before you war. Sometimes it doesn't work. In fact, sadly enough, there are far too many times it doesn't work. But a lot of the time it does. Diplomatic function, hosting dinners and parties and turning up and reminding people subtly, this is all the firepower we have. This is the firepower, this is our capabilities. Don't push us. Talk to us instead like we're talking to you now. That is what a warship does. A castle is a very similar thing. A castle is as much about showing up, about having the firepower, the military capability, as it is about having the status symbols inside. For a king to visit a castle on a regular basis is important. For a king to be able to visit the castle and entertain the local lords and have them go and go, look at how powerful I am. This is one of many castles I have. Look how richly decorated it is. Look how much light, how much space, how big a hall, how many soldiers and how many generals and leaders I have in my retinue. That's important. That's how you scare people. That's how you hopefully stop wars. Now, the outer ward consisted of an 8-sided curtain wall, as can be seen, with 12 turrets enclosing an area of approximately, well, 18 meters across. Now, the defences were originally equipped with a little over 300 firing positions for archers, including 164 arrow slits. However, 64 of those have been closed up on the ground level because they didn't want to be exploited by attackers. Probably this is during the Civil War, I would say. Some people reckon the early 15th century, but I'm thinking more Civil War period, as honestly the garrisons pre that I don't think were that active. The outer ward are 11 meter high, about 4.7 meter thick walls, and you can walk around them, but they're not that substantial. I know. That's the inner ward. Are 11 meters high and 4.7 meters thick. They're lovely. The outer walls, they're about, I would say, about 5-6 meters high. And they are about half as long across, so they're about 2 meters across. They are very lovely thick walls. And it's a very nice castle. It is... That picture doesn't do it justice. That one does. And it's a very small space, really, in the outer space, but in the outer ward. The inner ward is half an acre. But again, it's not that massive space because it's not supposed to be supporting a massive garrison. It's about its presence. And it's about its status. That is Beaumaris. Right. Thank you very much for watching. I'm going to go get my tea now. I hope you've enjoyed these videos, and I hope you're going to look forward to the summary one. As you see, you've got coming up Robert Calder and the Battle of Lisa, are the long patrols coming up. Take care.